Stop trying to write perfect code. Yes, you heard me right. Perfect code is actually a trap that's holding us back. Now, before some of you are like,
what are you, stupid? You want us to write bad and terrible code?
no, that's not what I mean at all.
Well, actually, Sloth, I write perfect code because I use Rust.
So I'm currently reading Clean Code by
Robert C. Martin,
The Pragmatic Programmer by
David Thomas and Andrew Hunt,
and I just finished reading The Perfection Trap by
Thomas Curran.
And these books had me thinking, wow, perfection sucks. Now, if you want to read those books and get a little bit smarter, I'll leave them in the description. I 100% recommend them, but in this video, I'll be connecting points from these books to explain why this obsession of perfect, clean code is not only unnecessary, it's actually counterproductive. So let's get started. Okay, let's start off with the idea of perfect code. When people describe perfect code, it's usually code that's clean and just works. Sloth, what the fuck does clean code mean? Well, luckily for us,
Robert C. Martin
asked a lot of developers what this means, and to sum it up, it's optimized, it's elegant, it's easy to read, easy to change, easy to test, and it runs without breaking production. Now, if you want a more detailed explanation of what clean code is from experienced engineers, read the book. Or if you're too lazy, I made a newsletter called Sloth Bytes, which is designed for lazy programmers like me and you, where every week I send you bite-sized information which could be key insights from books like this, jobs and internship opportunities, hackathons, programming tips, and much more straight to your email, where I do all the work and you get all the benefits. So if you'd rather spend more time coding and less time reading about it, check out Sloth Bytes. It'll be in the description. Clean code is the holy grail for many programmers, and some might even consider it perfect code. And there's good reasons why a lot of people chase this ideal. Most of us start coding with the best intentions. We just want to write good code. And trying to write high quality code teaches us a lot of valuable lessons. It pushes us to learn the best practices in coding, it deepens our understanding of programming, and it improves our problem solving skills. But if you're one of those people that chase this ideal and keep trying to clean up and perfect your code, you're probably a perfectionist. If you aim for clean, flawless code because anything less feels wrong, you're pushing for perfection because you're so passionate. And that fucking sucks, because that passion is hurting you more than helping. Sloth, isn't passion supposed to be good?
Yes.
Passion is great. It fuels us. It motivates us to grind, to hustle, to go crazy, to go stupid. But too much passion can lead to perfectionism. And this perfectionism leads to you trying to write quote unquote perfect code. And that's bad, because that code will never look perfect to you. And you'll end up being in the perfection trap. This is how it'll go. First, you'll set up some really high standards for yourself. Now, because you set those standards so high, you're not gonna meet them. And because you didn't meet them, you fail. And because you failed, you're gonna feel depressed, anxious, ashamed, and how are you gonna cope with it? Setting yourself to even higher standards, which takes you back to step one. And this will keep going until you feel like you're not enough or programming is not for you. You're basically like Rock Lee from Naruto, where instead of getting superhuman strength, you get depression. Now, in the book, The Perfection Trap, our boy,
Thomas Curran,
says perfectionism is not black or white, so you can't really say you're a perfectionist and you're not a perfectionist. It doesn't work like that. Instead, perfectionism is more of a spectrum, so some people are more of a perfectionist than others, and that's really obvious in programming, since a lot of people are pretty picky about their code compared to others, but it doesn't stop there.
Thomas Curran
Says that perfectionism can manifest in a lot of different ways. He describes 3 specific types of perfectionism in the book. The first one is self-oriented perfectionism. This type is the one that everyone knows. It's the type of perfectionism where you impose incredibly high standards on yourself. It's that internal monologue that's saying,
I must be perfect, and nothing but perfect. I have to solve more LeetCode problems. I have to use Arch and Vim.
It's you pushing yourself to be perfect every single time, and it leads to a never-ending cycle of refinement. The second type of perfectionism is socially prescribed perfectionism. This type of perfectionism comes from the pressure from the environment. It's you believing that everyone around you expects you to be perfect. I've actually seen a lot of people have this type of perfectionism, and they don't realize it. And I struggle with this all the time too. It usually happens when you're too scared to share your code because you think other people will say it's garbage, or you're too scared to interview because you think the interviewer expects perfect code from you. And I don't blame you, this one's hard to get over. And now for the last type of perfectionism, other-oriented perfectionism. This type of perfectionism is actually directed outwards. You're the one expecting perfection from others. A lot of people in the tech industry have this type of perfectionism. An example is people expect software engineers from big tech companies to write really good code. They expect them to be super smart just because they work there. And if they don't meet that expectation, then people get mad wondering how they even got a job there. I think these three types of perfectionism increase as you continue learning how to code, because at a certain point, you'll have to learn optimization. Once you start learning how to optimize your code, that's all you want to do, at least in my experience. Every time I learn some new technique or some new way of doing something, I look at my old code and it looks 100 times worse now. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I should not be a programmer. Use this design pattern, use this data structure, use this algorithm. Oh wow, time complexity? I gotta write my code in 420 time. You start to develop a terrible habit, and it leads to a term that I liked called premature optimization. Premature optimization is spending a lot of time optimizing something that you may not actually need to do. And it's so common that it has a saying, premature optimization is the root of all evil.
But what's wrong with that, Sloth? Isn't it a good thing to write optimized code?
Well, yeah, of course it's good. Nobody wants this. They want this. But once it becomes an obsession, it stops being about making the code better and optimized, and it becomes more about making it perfect. And that's where the problems start. There's a difference between optimizing your code by choosing a good data structure and trying to improve the speed of a fucking for loop. So basically, there's a difference in trying to write optimized code and trying to write perfect code. Because when you're writing optimized code, you know when to stop. Let me explain some of the problems you'll have if you keep trying to write perfect code. The first one is burnout. If you're trying to be perfect, you're probably spending hours obsessing over every single line of code. You're not sleeping because it's not good enough. You're not happy with your lead code performance. I don't know, your database query is 1 millisecond too slow. And guess what? You're taking the fun out of it. You're stressing yourself out for no reason. And if you keep this up, this is gonna lead to stress, anxiety, and ultimately you're gonna get burnt out because of how much time you're spending. The other problem you're gonna have, especially for beginners, is you're gonna learn slower. You're gonna be too scared to make mistakes, and that's gonna prevent you from stepping out of your comfort zone, and that's gonna mess up your learning. I personally believe when it comes to learning how to code, it's all about quantity over quality, which is a little weird because it's a field where they want high quality stuff, but programming is a skill. The more time you spend doing it, the better you're gonna get. However, the way you use that time is also important. A programmer who completes multiple projects is probably gonna learn faster than another programmer who spends that same amount of time perfecting a single project. And that's because each new project has its own unique set of challenges and learning opportunities. The programmer who completed multiple projects probably made more mistakes, and that's okay, because those mistakes made him a way better programmer than the one who spent that time perfecting a single project. When you don't allow yourself to make mistakes, you miss out on the essential learning opportunities that come from trial and error. Making mistakes and facing challenges head on are some of the best ways to gain deep insight and practical knowledge in coding. And the same goes if you have experience. You're probably going to avoid taking on projects that involve unfamiliar technologies just because you'll be back to step one of producing bad code and making mistakes. And I get it. You have to install your tools, set up your environment, read documentation, just deal with it. And not only that, perfectionism can lead to you overthinking even the simplest tasks. You might spend hours tweaking and refining code that already meets the requirements, and you're missing the chance to move on to a new challenge and some new learning opportunity. You're stressing yourself out because you want to create perfect code, and all of a sudden programming's hard, and then you want to quit because of the pressure you put on yourself. This type of stress can cloud your thinking, it reduces your cognitive abilities, and it makes it harder to absorb new information. Okay, I think you get the idea of why trying to write perfect code is bad. So what can we do to get this mindset out? This is where the pragmatic programmer comes in. Why this book? Well, because it says right here, tip number 30, you can't write perfect software. And it also says this right here, tip number 31, use Brilliant. What's Brilliant? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's today's sponsor. Brilliant is a learning platform where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI. Brilliant is designed to be effective. Their approach to learning helps you build understanding from the ground up. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts. This method of learning is proven to be 6 times more effective than watching lecture videos. Plus, all the content on Brilliant is crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google, and more. Their lessons help you build your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not memorizing. So while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you'll also become a better thinker. I've been using Brilliant for a few months now, and one of my favorite courses is How LLMs Work, where you essentially get to learn how AIs like ChatGPT work. It's pretty cool. You get hands-on experience with real language models, and you get to explore how they build their vocabulary, choose their next word, and more. You also also get to learn how training data affects the models by comparing models that are trained on different types of training data. And not only that, you'll also learn how to tune a language model, and this will let you see how to generate different kinds of output, whether it's something more professional or something more casual. So if this all sounds interesting to you and you'd like to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/thecodingsloth or click the link in the description. You also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Alright, back to the video. Throughout The Pragmatic Programmer,
David Thomas and Andrew Hunt
reminds us that our primary role as programmers is to solve problems, not to write perfect code. And in the book, there's a specific section called Good Enough Software, where instead of writing something perfect, write something that's good enough. Now, does that mean write terrible and sloppy code? Well, you already do that, but no. What they're trying to say here is, instead of focusing on refining every single line of code, focus more about the features that truly add value to the project. And you should only refine your code when there's a new requirement or when you have feedback from other people, instead of you just pursuing perfection. And the decision on whether the code is good enough should be based off the developer's judgment and the user's input.
But I don't have anybody to give me feedback.
Then join my Discord. We'll gladly give you feedback to improve your code. Now, there is some situations where this doesn't apply. Maybe you just want to learn how something works, or you have some super strict requirement from a professor or manager. That's a whole different thing. That's out of your control. I'm sorry. But if you're the one that's making everything perfect for no reason and stressing yourself out, I strongly recommend reading The Pragmatic Programmer. It'll help you out so much. There's a really good analogy in the book that compares programming to painting, where it basically says, just as an artist knows when to stop adding layers to a painting, a programmer must learn when to stop embellishing their code. Over-embellishment can spoil a perfectly good program, just as excessive details can ruin a painting. So stop trying to write perfect code and start writing code that's good enough. I'll end this with a description by Ed Jordan, who was a really smart programmer, which states,
"You can discipline yourself to write software that's good enough for your users, for future maintainers, for your own peace of mind. You'll find that you are more productive and your users are happier, and you may well find that your programs are actually better for their shorter incubation."
If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you disliked it, and I'll see you all in the next video.